All right. Saturday, Melania Trump testified not in some closed door or deposition, not a written statement, in front of the Supreme Court under oath. And according to court documents filed Thursday, $1.2 billion frozen, 17 properties, 347 bank accounts across 6 jurisdictions. U.S. Marshals started executing seizure orders Friday morning. I've been reading these filings since they dropped transcripts to 14 pages. Exhibits run another 380. Here's what I found. The former First Lady didn't just answer questions. She provided documentation, internal communications, financial records spanning 8 years, and the justices, all 9 of them, issued an emergency order within 4 hours of her leaving the chamber. That doesn't happen. Let me show you what she said. Quick context. Melania Trump, former First Lady, 2017 to 2021. Then again, 2025 to present. Before that, model businesswoman kept the lowest profile of any modern First Lady. The issue: she was subpoenaed to testify in the ongoing constitutional challenge regarding presidential immunity and asset forfeit connected to multiple federal indictments. Timeline, fast version. 2 weeks ago, Supreme Court agreed to hear emergency arguments on whether seized assets could be held during pending appeals. 10 days ago, special counsel filed motion requesting spousal testimony, arguing Melania held signatory authority on 14 offshore accounts. 5 days ago, court granted the motion over objections. Wednesday, Melania Trump entered the Supreme Court building through a private entrance at 7:14 a.m. Didn't leave until 6:47 p.m. That's the setup. What nobody expected. She didn't invoke spousal privilege, didn't take the fifth, answered everything. Her legal team sat there watching. According to reporters present, lead counsel looked physically ill by the lunch break. Make sure you subscribe to stay connected. Tell me your thoughts in the comments and share this video with others who might enjoy it. I truly appreciate your support and can't wait to see you in the next one. When she finished, Chief Justice called an immediate conference. 4 hours later, emergency seizure orders. Friday morning, Marshals moved. Now, the documents, okay, the evidence. First document filed Thursday evening. I pulled page 47. It says, quoting here, "The witness provided documentary evidence of 17 wire transfers originating from accounts held jointly with her spouse totaling $847 million directed to receiving entities in Cyprus, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands between March 2025 and January 2026. That's not my take. That's the filing, what it means. Melania had records showing where money went after federal freeze orders were supposed to stop transfers. But here's what got me. Page 112, different section. She brought receipts, actual bank confirmations, time-stamped, showing transfers happened after the original asset freeze was ordered in November. Put those together. Yeah, someone moved money while court said they couldn't. I went through this 3 times. Patterns clear. November 14th, 2025, court orders assets frozen pending trial. November 19th through December 3rd, $847 million moves. Anyway, December through January, additional $340 million through a Nevada LLC. All documented now. What nobody's covering, page 189, Exhibit K, Melania testified. She was asked to sign transfer authorizations without knowing their contents. Quote from transcript, "I was told these were routine business matters. I signed where indicated. I did not know funds were subject to judicial order." Read that again? That changes this. She's claiming she didn't know, but she brought the proof anyway. Her lawyers tried to stop her from handing over Exhibit K. Judge overruled. She submitted it voluntarily after that. The document shows her signature dated November 22nd, 5 days after the freeze. Now, here's where it gets complicated. Page 203, her explanation. She testified that in early January, she discovered discrepancies between what she was told and what actually happened. She consulted with independent counsel, not the family's legal team. That attorney advised her of potential criminal exposure if she didn't cooperate. She chose cooperation. The filing notes witness demonstrated consistent pattern of providing information against apparent personal and familial interest, suggesting credibility assessment weighs favorably. Fallout. Chief Justice ordered immediate compliance review. Marshals tasked with executing seizures on all properties connected to the suspect transfers, 17 locations across 4 states and 3 countries, though obviously marshals only hit domestic properties. Morago marshals arrived 6:12 a.m. Friday. Trump Tower, 3 floors, 7:34 a.m. Bedminster property, 8:15 a.m. 7 additional properties by noon. All domestic assets connected to the flagged accounts, frozen, pending, full, forfeited. Hearing 2 billion in total assessed value within 36 hours of her testimony ending. One more thing from the evidence, page 211, the final exhibit. Melania submitted personal notes handwritten from conversations with her husband about the transfers dated December 14th. The notes are partially redacted in the public filing, but what's visible includes told not to worry, said lawyers handling, asked about court order, was told doesn't apply to us. Direct contemporaneous documentation. Now you understand why the court moved so fast. That's just the first layer of this. I'm breaking down every section that matters. If this kind of breakdown is useful, document analysis, not just headlines. Subscribe. I'm covering this as it develops. More coming. Okay. But look, gotta be fair here. The other side has a point. Few points, actually. Trump loyalists say this is as coerced testimony from a spouse under duress. And honestly, some of that holds up. Their argument first, Melania was subpoenaed. She didn't volunteer. The government forced her into that chair using legal mechanisms that have never been applied to a sitting first lady. Second, spousal privilege exists for a reason. It protects the sanctity of marriage and prevents the government from weaponizing family relationships. By compelling her testimony, the court arguably violated centuries of common law tradition. Senator Mike Lee, ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, put it this way: this isn't justice. This is the criminalization of marriage. They've turned a wife against her husband using the full weight of the federal government. Don't agree with all of it, but that's not nothing. What they've got, the special counsel did seek this testimony aggressively, and lower courts initially rejected the subpoena before the Supreme Court intervened. Melania's independent counsel, wasn't truly independent, appointed through like a process critics call compromise. Even Jonathan Turley, constitutional law professor at George Washington University, who's defended Trump on multiple occasions, admits, regardless of what she testified to, the mechanism by which this testimony was obtained will be debated for decades. There are legitimate concerns about precedent. Look, I'm not here to tell you who's right. The prosecution's interpretation evidence supports that money moved illegally, and Melania provided documentation proving it. The defense interpretation evidence exists that she was coerced, that her testimony shouldn't be admissible, and that the entire process violated executive and spousal privilege. Both can be true. That's what makes this complicated. There's also the question of her motive, and some supporters say she was protecting herself, cutting a deal to avoid prosecution. That's not noble. That's self-preservation. And there's historical precedent for spouses providing damaging testimony under pressure. John Dean's wife during Watergate, various mob cases. The pattern isn't new. Critics also point out Melania has her own legal exposure. Those signatures on transfer documents, she could face charges. This testimony might be an immunity play. Her attorneys haven't confirmed or denied whether she received any immunity agreement. The filing is silent on that. One former federal judge retired from the 11th Circuit said, before we canonize this testimony, we should examine what she was offered in exchange. Immunity deals don't appear in public filings, and that's a fair question. I'm also seeing arguments that the timing is suspicious. Melania, testifying now with elections 18 months away, feels politically convenient to some observers. They're not wrong to ask about timing. Courts don't exist in vacuums. But I can tell you what the documents show, and they show she provided evidence voluntarily after the subpoena, but voluntarily submitted Exhibit K when her lawyers tried to block it. That's the bridge to what happened next. This didn't come out of nowhere. Backstory quick. 18 months ago, first federal indictments landed. Asset freeze requests filed immediately. Courts granted partial freezes 12 months ago Appeals began. Freeze orders got tangled in jurisdictional fights. Money started moving through shell companies while courts debated. And 6 months ago, special counsel flagged suspicious transfers. Subpoenas went to banks in Cyprus and Switzerland. Some cooperated, others didn't. 3 months ago, investigators traced signatory authority. Melania's name appeared on 14 accounts, previously unknown to prosecutors. Someone even said on record back in December, "We always knew the First Lady had more involvement than publicly acknowledged. The paper trail was there. We just needed access." Former DOJ officials spoke to Reuters. What happened? Courts granted access, pattern, initial freeze orders, partial compliance at best, shell companies activated within days of each order, money routed through jurisdictions with limited U.S. cooperation. Every time prosecutors closed one door, another opened. Every time got away with it until Wednesday. What changed? The Supreme Court's emergency jurisdiction meant no more delays, no more appeals, buying time. Melania was told, testify or face contempt. And contempt before the Supreme Court carries immediate consequences. She chose to testify, and once she started talking, she didn't stop. See where this is going? If you're following the money trail with me, like this video sounds simple, but it tells the algorithm people actually care about document breakdowns, not just clickbait. Hit like if it makes sense so far. Wednesday, 2:34 p.m. Eastern. Here's what happened. Melania Trump was asked directly by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson about her knowledge of the November transfers. Her answer, quoting the transcript, "I knew money was being moved. I was told it was legal. I signed what I was asked to sign. I now understand that was not accurate." Chamber went silent. What followed, Justice Alo requested a 5-minute recess. Chief Justice Roberts called counsel to sidebar session resume with all 9 justices present. Unusual for testimony proceedings. 47 minutes. That's how long the next segment lasted. During that time, Melania submitted Exhibits J through M, the handwritten notes, the bank confirmations, the timeline she'd reconstructed with her independent counsel. Now, what everyone missed while media focused on the seizure orders, something else happened Thursday night. A separate filing, case number 24 into 1847, docketed at 11:47 p.m., criminal referral, not for Melania, for 3 attorneys who advised on the transfers. Then, Friday morning, before the Marshall raids even started, 2 of those attorneys attempted to leave the country through Teterboro Airport. Customs stopped them, passports flagged overnight. Attorney General's office confirmed Saturday morning. Both are in federal custody pending arraignment Monday. The 3rd attorney, lead counsel, who sat in the chamber watching Melania testify, surrendered voluntarily Friday evening. 3 lawyers, all facing obstruction charges, all connected to the advice Melania says she relied on. Here's what that means. The government isn't just seizing assets anymore. They're building criminal cases against the people who made the transfers possible. And if those attorneys flip like Melania did, the exposure goes higher. You can see the strategy in the charging documents. Start with the advisors, build the record. Use their testimony for the next level. This is where it gets interesting. Don't go anywhere. What I show next is the expert analysis, and it explains why this matters beyond the headlines. Drop your prediction in the comments. Do you think this leads to additional indictments? Then keep watching. What are experts saying? Former federal prosecutor, Southern District of New York, 17 years experience. What Melania did is textbook cooperation. She provided documents the government didn't know existed. That's not coerced testimony. That's someone getting ahead of criminal exposure. Plain English, she came with more than they asked for. That's significant. Another one, constitutional law professor at Yale, the spousal privilege argument fails because she waived it voluntarily. You can't claim privilege was violated when the witness chose not to invoke it. Key there. She had the right to stay silent, chose not to. Here's what's interesting. Even Alan Dershowitz, who's defended Trump repeatedly, admits the Exhibit K submission was devastating. Once she handed that over Volin, after her own lawyers objected, credibility arguments became very difficult for the defense. Like when both sides agree, pay attention. Supreme Court historian, author of 3 books on court procedure. In 230 years, the court has never issued same-day seizure orders following live testimony. The speed suggests the justices saw something that demanded immediate action. What that means, this wasn't normal procedure. The court fast-tracked because they believed delay meant asset flight. And based on those two attorneys at Teterboro, they were right. Consensus from the experts I reviewed. Melania's testimony is credible because she provided more than required. The spousal privilege defense is legally weak given her explicit waiver. The seizure speed indicates judicial concern about obstruction. Criminal referrals for attorneys suggest expanding investigation. Former assistant U.S. attorney, now in private practice. When the government charges the lawyers first, they're building a ladder. Every rung goes higher. We've seen this playbook before. Enron RICO cases. The lawyers aren't the end game. That's where professionals land, not speculation. Pattern recognition from people who've done this work. Useful breakdown so far. Hit like. I know everyone says this, but for real, that button matters. It tells YouTube this isn't just drama bait, it's actual analysis. People want helps more than you'd think. Why should you care? Real talk. How this affects actual people, money. If you pay federal taxes, pay attention. The $1.2, $2 billion in seized assets, if forfeit proceeds goes to the Treasury, that's not nothing. It's also not going to lower your taxes, but it does offset enforcement costs that otherwise come from appropriations. Your wallet, if you hold investments affected by political instability, market volatility around this news is real. Futures dropped 2.3% Friday afternoon before recovering. What some people are doing. Moving to defensive positions until Monday's arraignment clarifies what's next. Not advice, just what I'm seeing in financial coverage. Precedent. This sets precedent three ways. First, spousal testimony at the Supreme Court level. Never happened like this before. Future cases will cite this. Second, same-day seizure orders following testimony. New territory expands judicial tools for asset protection. Third, criminal referrals for attorneys mid-P proceeding. Chilling effect on legal counsel in future high-profile cases. Next time you hear about a major political figure under investigation, the lawyers advising them just watch 3 colleagues get arrested. That changes calculations. Quick example. Your attorney tells you something's legal. You rely on that advice. Later, turns out it wasn't legal. Under old norms, your attorney faced bar complaints, maybe malpractice suits. Now, they might face federal charges. That changes the legal profession. Full stop. Who's affected? Right now, 17 properties in legal limbo, staff at those properties, security, maintenance, household, don't know if they're employed next week. Mar-a-Lago alone employs over 500 people. Bedminster, another 300. These are real jobs, real families affected by seizure orders. The legal process will take months. Those workers are in uncertainty now, hits immediately. What nobody wants to say, uncomfortable part. If Melania's testimony holds, if courts accept her account that she was misled by attorneys and her husband, she may escape prosecution entirely while others don't. If you're a Trump supporter, that feels like betrayal. If you are a Trump critic, it feels like insufficient accountability. Neither side gets what they want. That's reality. Practical. What informed people are doing. Watching Monday's arraignment for the 3 attorneys. Monitoring whether additional family members receive subpoenas. Tracking asset forfeit proceedings. Those are public. Questions to ask your financial advisor if you're in affected markets. What's my exposure to political volatility risk? Should I rebalance before Monday's news cycle? Knowledge helps. Most people don't track this stuff. You're here, so you do. How'd the Trump team respond? Made it worse. Honestly, Friday evening, statement released calling Melania's testimony coerced, unreliable, and part of a coordinated persecution campaign. Quote, "The former First Lady was threatened with prosecution unless she performed for her handlers. Nothing she said under duress should be given weight." Reaction statement, contradicted by court filings, showing Melania voluntarily submitted additional exhibits. Legal analysts immediately pointed out the inconsistency. 3 attorneys arrested hours after statement released, undermining persecution narrative. Melania's independent counsel responded Saturday morning, Mrs. Trump testified truthfully and voluntarily. Any characterization otherwise is inaccurate. She remains committed to transparency throughout this process. That's a public break. First Lady's lawyer contradicting the president's statement. Then this morning, additional development. Anonymous sources inside the legal team told reporters the president is furious and considering all options regarding the testimony. What options? Unclear. Pardons don't apply to civil forfeit. Executive privilege was already litigated and lost. CNN's reporting suggests internal discussions about whether Melania should be removed from the White House. Other outlets say that's overblown. Either way, not cooling down, heating up. The family response made this a bigger story, not a smaller one. That contradiction between coerced and voluntary submission will dominate Sunday shows. What's still unclear? 1, did Melania receive an immunity agreement? Filing doesn't say. Prosecutors won't confirm. If she did, scope matters. 2, why now? She had this documentation for months. What triggered cooperation in January versus earlier? 3 additional family members, Don Jr. and Eric, have signatory authority on some flagged accounts. Subpoenas possible, but not yet confirmed. Coming. Federal court has arraignment scheduled Monday, February 9th at 10 a.m. for the 3 attorneys. That's where we'll learn more about what they're being charged with specifically. Tuesday, February 10th, House Oversight Committee convenes emergency hearing on executive asset management. Witnesses TBD, but expected to include former Treasury officials. The president reportedly consulting with remaining legal counsel about next steps, options, narrowing. Date to watch, Thursday, February 12th. That's when the Supreme Court reconvenes to hear arguments on whether the seizure order should become permanent pending trial. Should know more by then. If justices uphold the seizures, forfeit proceedings begin immediately. If they modify the orders, assets may be released with conditions. 4 days out. Subscribe. I'll cover the Monday arraignment and Thursday's Supreme Court session when they happen. This story is moving faster than anything I've covered. Notifications on means you'll catch the breakdown within hours of documents dropping. Hit subscribe. Where we are right now. Melania's testimony complete. 214 pages of transcript now public. 17 properties under seizure order. $1.2 billion in assets frozen. 3 attorneys in federal custody. Public break between First Lady's legal team and White House. Scheduled Monday, February 9th at 10 a.m. attorney arraignment, Federal Courthouse, D.C. Tuesday, February 10th, House Oversight Emergency Hearing. Thursday, February 12th, Supreme Court reconvenes on seizure permanence. Next Friday, February 13th, deadline for Trump legal team to respond to forfeit motion. Not public yet. Whether additional family members face subpoenas, whether Melania has immunity agreement, whether the president will attempt any executive action in response. Clocks running every day between now and Thursday is an opportunity for new filings. Courts stay active over weekends in emergency cases. The special counsel's office hasn't issued a statement since Friday, which usually means they're working, not resting. I'm monitoring federal court dockets. Anything significant drops, I'll have a video up. That's where we are. Melania Trump testified under oath, provided documentation exceeding what was requested, currently cooperating with ongoing proceedings. Surface rid. A wife turned on her husband to save herself, but the documentation she provided suggests she was misled. The voluntary submission of Exhibit K suggests she wanted the record corrected. The immediate arrest of 3 attorneys suggests prosecutors believe her account. This isn't simple betrayal or simple heroism. It's complicated, like most things actually are. I'll be watching Thursday's Supreme Court sessions specifically. That's where seizure orders either become permanent or get modified. That's the next inflection point. Story's not over, still developing. What we know more than we did a week ago. What we don't know, whether this expands further. I break down documents when they drop. Not speculation, not spin, what filings actually say. Subscribe for the full picture, not just headlines. When Thursday happens, you'll have a breakdown here within hours. Talk soon. If this video was helpful or entertaining, subscribe for more, comment your favorite part below, and share it with someone who would enjoy it. I'm grateful for every like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching.